Hi everyone, welcome to Let's Go Zero's local authority workshop for financing and implementing net zero interventions for schools. I'm going to get started straight away. So before I introduce our speakers for this morning, I will give a brief overview of the Let's Go Zero campaign for those who are not familiar with us. So Let's Go Zero is a campaign calling on the government to support schools, colleges and nurseries across the UK to reach zero carbon by 2030. We ask schools to join the campaign to show their intent and ambition to get to zero carbon and to prove to the government and to the DfE that there is demand to decarbonise from schools across the country. So we work as a coalition of sustainability organisations. So Ashton, who I work for, lead the campaign, but we're backed by 17 other sustainability organisations. You can see them all here, and they all have a wealth of experience working with schools to help them become more sustainable. So we support schools in a number of different ways. We have our monthly newsletters, we run different competitions, we host webinars, and we have a fantastic new project, our Climate Action Advisors, which is a network of free independent advisors based regionally across England who offer schools one-on-one support. So they'll help with creating climate action plans, conducting energy audits, and they'll be able to signpost to different funding pots. So it's a really great resource. So please do share it with your schools. Max is popping the links in the chat now. And this is our contact information. So our email address and our website, you can follow us on socials for more information, but please do get in touch. So before I introduce our speakers, please, if anyone, introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you have any questions for our presenters, put them in the Q&A box or the chat, and we will have 5 minutes after both presentations to run through them. So we have two speakers today. We have Swati Patel, a net zero analyst from the Northwest Net Zero Hub, and Roly Martin, Managing Director and Head of Finance from Global City Futures. Ooh, I've just seen in the chat. Is anyone else having trouble seeing the presentation? Someone could give me a yes or no in the chat, would be great. Okay. Okay. Yes, I think if you try to leave the meeting and then rejoin, you might be able to see it. So first up, we have Swati Patel. Swati works at the Northwest Net Zero Hub, which is one of the 5 regional hubs in the country. She has been helping local authorities and other public sector organisations develop and finance projects. She helps them with building assessments and climate data analysis, also managing net zero data sets and tools. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Swati.
Thanks, Alison.
Let me stop presenting.
If you could just confirm it's you can see it. Right. Okay. Morning, everyone. I am really excited to be here and extend our support to all schools in their decarbonisation journey. I'm here to present on behalf of the Northwest Net Zero Hub. We are one of the five hubs that have been created by DESNES all over the country, and I do work in the Northwest for the Northwest Hub, and we do offer free support to institutions and local authorities to help them reach net zero targets, with schools comprising about 35 to 36% of the public sector emissions. I think it's really important that all institutions become informed and be supported to reach the net zero goals. And we've been hearing about even DfE's initiatives and ambitions about the action plans and all that. I believe that requires a lot of knowledge and support as much as possible, because it's a field where everyone is quite, it's quite new terminologies and all the climate jargon that revolves around it. So we provide lots of different kinds of support, and ranging from strategic support to guidance on policy, business case development, training and grant funding information, and helping for the applications. Local authorities can also reach out to us for tailored project assistance in case of, like, sometimes they come across some roadblocks or any kind of bottlenecks and need a specialist guidance. So these kind of support range across different themes that we work across, ranging from public buildings, home energy, clean heat, local area energy planning, heat networks, green finance, and we are constantly evolving in terms of our scope as we speak. So these are the different pillars that we work across, and we have a regional program, which I just talked about. So we extend our support to all the 5 local areas in the Northwest, and similar goes with all the other hubs who are placed in their regions. Themes I did talk about just now. Yeah, these are all the themes, and we do have all the delivery programs as well, like public sector decarbonization. Sorry, just local area community energy funds. So we do help across all the fundings as well. Narrowing down to our work for the public sector specifically, we have been for the past couple of years supporting local authorities on their public sector decarbonization, and supporting for the low carbon skills fund and the public sector decarbonization schemes to be ready in terms of project options, and ensure that all kind of documentations is quite all right in terms of funding for SELIX. To strengthen our support, we have also been working recently on so we've been developing this digital building toolkit that provides a nice app and Power BI based interface for any kind for local authorities to enter their building data through it and see various kinds of decarbonization options and how much they can save up on energy and carbon. So this we are planning to release as a free support to all the local authorities, which can help them to prepare for LCSF and PSTS as well. So this is like broadly what we are working on the public sector front. So we do extend our services for buildings across. We do have knowledge exchange, and we sit on various forums where the specialists across the country sit in the working groups, and we do share knowledge and best practices, case studies, so we can signpost people to all kind of practices that are happening all across the country. We do provide specialist guidance on procurement to project planning, and also post-funding support towards project planning and implementation and delivery as well. Yeah, that's on buildings. And I think I'm not sure if we are all must be aware of Net Zero Go, which is a brilliant platform that we are all blessed with. And I personally do like it for all the kinds of guidances, tools, templates that are in there, and ranging across all the different kinds of themes that are that go across the net zero segment. Yeah, it does need registration though, like from the authority side. A couple of examples on how Northwest has been contributing, and we have been publishing guidances that go on the Net Zero Go platform. So we have been recently, like for past 1 year, we have been getting different kind of requests on specific building cases, and So we've been trying to build these guidance across leisure centers and schools, because each type of building use is quite different in terms of how they can approach decarbonization or solar, like installing solar, maintaining those systems. So there is a guide that we published on leisure centers to installing solar power. We have also published a guidance to maintain solar power systems. So these were pretty recent works of Northwest Hub, and you can find them in the Net Zero Go platform. I think GM's solar tools for schools is one of them, which I'm really, yeah, I do use it a lot. It's pretty handy and does give you all the information that you need to be installing solar panels on the schools, and it's pretty easy to use as well. It's just map based. That's my first skill. Sorry. Um, so coming down to funding that we support with, so public sector low carbon skills fund, which got closed recently, we've seen quite a few changes in terms of how they approach the assessment, because till last year there were quite a few, like there was a real disappointment in terms of how the assessment goes through, and certain regions never really can come across the funding because of the first come first serve basis. So there have been quite nice changes where they have recently they've they got down to sorting the applications in a random order this time, prior to assessment, and then do the assessment in that order rather than first come first serve. So all the comments that we received from the local authorities in terms of application to Salix were nicely noted, and we do feed them back to Salix as well. So we have been seeing some nice changes, and we hope to see more. Specific to this funding, we, if you're aware, there's more funding on public sector decarbonization announced recently for the next 3 years. So we do see like a clear sight of what's coming, and with all the changes, I think there is a nice scope for schools to apply for them, and we're there to support through various stages of applications, from preparation to planning. We also do review the decarbonization plans, so it's all kind of free support, and we do help with the submission as well, and getting across any kind of queries with Salix as well, if any in-depth is needed. So we've been doing that with recently we did submit a combined bid across Northwest, and we would like to encourage, if we do have like a lot of participation, we could go that way as well, or we could help you with your individual applications through these stages, and all sorts of support that we can provide on this. Yeah, and these are our contact information. You could email the Northwest Net Zero Hub. We are also there on LinkedIn. So the link is all here. And I think the presentations are going to be circulated after the presentations. And we do have a website, Northwest Route to Net Zero. And it also links to Northwest Net Zero Hub website, where we do have all the details that I just talked about. Yeah, and that is it really from my side.
Perfect. Thank you. That was really, really interesting and helpful, and perfectly timed. Bang on 10 minutes. So I think we'll go straight to Rolly and then do some questions afterwards. So to introduce Rolly Martin, he is Managing Director at Global City Futures and leads on finance and professional services. His work focuses on building investable business models that deliver on decarbonised energy independence, sustainable housing, NHS infrastructure, and community. So over to you, Rolly.
Thank you. Just going to get this into present mode. Just let me know if that works. Okay. Okay, good. Okay. So, God, there's so much to cover here, and I apologize. I'm going to move quite quickly through this, but happy to take as many questions afterwards as necessary. So I'm just going to discuss I guess kind of 4 levels here. So looking at a campus level or a school level, building level projects that we've done to decarbonise, and in this case, heat. At a citywide level, where we can take an approach, particularly for schools, for doing this in a grouped geographical area. So that's a citywide project, an example where that works. And then at a regional level, an example where we've done it across regional government, so GMCA being Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So how do we do that at a kind of a more policy intersecting the market level? And then finally looking at how we do this at a national level, interacting with Department for Education. So how do we get policy and the market to work at a national level so they can deliver a framework? So just very briefly, we work with all of these organisations at a kind of a policy with the market level, all the way down to the kind of right on the coalface in terms of delivering projects, making projects happen so that they are interventions that cause a reduction in carbon for all these organisations. And these are in various forms, such as decarbonised heat and or other net zero interventions, and how they're financed. So just very briefly what that means, and I think what we're all trying to do here, which is have a sustainability strategy or a net zero intervention or a decarb heat network, and you've got to push that through this process, which is understanding how that's economically evaluated, how do we get a commercial deal in place so that it's done, how is it financed, how is it modelled, and then how do you push that through a business case you ultimately get where we all want to go, which is a procurement of a solution that decarbonises our estate or gets us to net zero. So just very briefly, why do we need to do all this? Why are we helping? Well, this is what I call the aspiration gap, which we'll go through very quickly. So the green boxes are, we want the published government aspirations, we want to go net zero, and then the other green box is the scaled, regional, impactful net zero interventions. Great. But all of these other things are in the way, which is, you know, the policy and how enforceable it is, and funding, local plans and planning and funding, governments and procurements, funding, commercial and delivery models, which we've got to find, and funding, and then what's testing the market for all of this, and funding, and then, if I haven't mentioned it, funding. And this is what prevents us from navigating from an aspiration to a delivered intervention. I think I've sort of laid that on quite thick about it being around the funding. So just to move to some examples. So this is a good example. I know it's an NHS Trust example, but this is a good example because the NHS is really hamstrung in terms of not being able to get any capital. They don't have spare ability to borrow. They can't have anything appear on their balance sheet, so they can't take leases. And I know schools are in a similar position. However, there are off-balance sheet solutions that do work, and we did some work for this NHS Trust to sculpt how a commercial deal could be put together and tested with the market to deliver decarbonised heat into the hospital without it hitting their capital budget, is basically the summary of that. But that required first an understanding of what the market would accept, understanding what those balance sheet limitations were, and then how to create a commercial deal that made sense within all the budgeting rules so that the NHS Trust could push that through their business case process. And that's really important because the accounting shouldn't really drive the deal or drive the whole process, but it's the sad fact that a lot of institutions do have balance sheet pressures and need the private sector to come in and deliver this. And also we need to manage the balance sheet implications of all of that. So there are solutions that deliver it off balance sheet. They can be done and they have been tested with the market, and it has worked in a NHS Trust environment. Similarly, we are working with Exeter City to deliver a city-wide solution, and this is less about the balance sheet issues, but more about economies of scale. So all the public sector institutions effectively coming together, and we kind of quarterback that process to deliver business cases to decarbonise all of their heat so that we could take that into a procurement process. So that again means running through the business case process, getting successful PSDS applications done, Green Heat Network Fund applications done, and all of that goes into the pot to manage the viability and the affordability of these large public sector organisations, universities, hospitals, councils, effectively unplugging their gas and plugging into the decarbonised heat network. And the benefits of this are it's all economies of scale because everybody's connecting at the same time, and you can get large grant funding if it's successful to manage the capital costs of building that. So there's lots of collaborative and governance work that needs to go to get through that governance process, and then managing that with the market and what they will deliver. Moving on to the next example. So this is regional, and again, this may work in a school's example in terms of multi-academy trusts or others that are groups within a local authority area. And the reason I pulled this example up is that the GMCA had a bunch of schools in different districts. So there were clusters of schools in different districts of the GMCA with which we did a large modelling exercise, really, which is to say, what kits do you need to decarbonise your buildings estate across this district, across the whole of GMCA, some of which are schools. So what's the cost of that kit? How does that reduce your energy? How does that reduce your carbon? What are the numbers around that? And therefore, how much is it going to cost to put in versus the savings it makes at the back end? And therefore, what's your funding gap? And what do we need to apply for from either PSDS, or can we raise elsewhere from internally within that district's balance sheet, or some other place? So it was a means of exposing, firstly, what the private sector would be prepared to invest because they need their return, and then exposing the gap that is created because you need to meet the cost of the kit that has been already ascertained by the technical analysis. I hope I've explained that right. So it's kind of back solving the objective of decarbonising the whole estate, but understanding how much money can come from the private sector feasibly, commercially, and then what's left over to be funded centrally. And again, we're looking at the same sort of structure within a Department for Education context. So looking at how do we manage the Treasury's balance sheet for borrowing money effectively, and are there solutions that deliver this in an off-balance sheet context? There are, and we're in talks with DFE on how to roll that out on a national basis, but it's very much in its infancy. And then how do we coordinate that with skills gaps and the knowledge hubs that need to happen across a national framework? So what are we doing in all of this? So the must-have work streams, I think, for all schools, for all public sector institutions, if they're going to do this, are understanding your strategy, understanding your technical options appraisal. So what's the best kit to have in there? And then how do you go to market to convince an installer, an investor, to come in and put that kit into the buildings estate, knowing that they're going to get their return? And then how do we fund that to make that happen? And how do we project manage that? So all those work streams need to be in place that ultimately funnel into a clean and tidy and robust business case. And why do we need a clean, tidy, robust business case? Because ultimately we can't pay for it all ourselves, and we can't get the private sector to pay for it all because the numbers just don't add up. So here's an example of the comfort model, let's say, and this is just one way of funding it, where you have an investor come in and your energy costs that on the left-hand side become your energy costs on the right-hand side, and then you've obviously got a chunk of savings because you've had some interventions put in, and then the rest of that has to go back to the investor who's put in all the kit. But that doesn't still cover the whole cost of the kit. It's still going to need some public sector finance in all of that. The numbers just very rarely add up for this to work, for buildings upgrades and decarbonised heat projects or air source heat pumps. Very rarely will it add up that the private sector will just come in and make their return quite happily because of savings. So we need a business case, and in order to get the public sector to spend the money, you need to have a business case that delivers the benefits that make sense to government, so that they will then part with some money for the project. Put in simple terms. So I've just listed some of the things that you would try and monetize in that business case in order to extract the money from government in an application process. And really, this is as simple as diagrammatically as I can put this. We need private capital, but it's not going to pay for all of it because they're not going to make their return. So therefore, we need government capital. All we have to do is deliver a business case that shows that the monetized benefits of doing the intervention, that is carbon reduction, health and well-being, cleaner air, if we can get all those monetized benefits to be significantly more than the government capital that we are asking for to pump prime the project, that brings the private sector to the table to fund the rest of it, then we've got a decent discussion going. So it's that process that we need to go through to understand what those benefits are, understand what the government capital is with the private capital. And lastly,
sorry, Rowley, 1 minute warning for you.
Yeah, this is the last one. I think that's good timing. So lastly, this is the health warning on all of this is, yes, there are off-balance sheet solutions we can deliver. Yes, there are projects that we can get the private sector to invest and we can convince government to pump prime so that they happen. But that doesn't mean that it's all a bed of roses. Your cost of energy, if you decarbonize, is going to go up because you're buying new stuff. And if you buy new stuff, you have to pay for it somehow, somewhere, at some point. But what it will do is it takes the institution out of the fossil fuel economy. So your costs, while they'll go up in the first instance, are going to be subject to kind of RPI sort of increases over time, as opposed to fossil fuel industry indices. So geopolitical factors such as invasions and the Russian price of gas isn't going to affect as badly your cost of energy going forward if you've got a energy project that is then run by a company that's running on RPI. So your overall area under that graph, under the dark blue line, is less over 20 years than it is on the business as usual. And that was really fast, and that's it from me. Any more questions, please do get in touch.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Please, if anyone does have questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A. We've got a couple of minutes to go through the questions that have been sent in, so I will ask those. We've got a question for Swati. First of all, how many local authorities are aware and engaging with the hub? Is there work to be done here, or is engagement already high?
That's a tricky one, actually. So quite a lot are engaging, but we are also reaching out to local authorities because sometimes we come across many who are not really aware of the support that can be provided. So we do send across, whenever a funding is announced, we do send across emails to all the local authorities in the region, but not sure if that's reaching the right people, because we do have engagement, but yeah, I think we can have more.
Great, thank you. And there was one more from the chat. Do all other hubs offer the same support for the public sector decarbonisation scheme? They are in the Southeast Net Zero Hub catchment area? Yeah.
So yeah, all the hubs provide the support on the public sector decarbonisation, and all the public sector leads from all the hubs also have monthly meetings in which they discuss the support and any kind of issues that arise. So I could actually put in the link to all the hubs. So they do all they all have their websites. It starts with the region name and then Net Zero Hub. If you want to look it up, and I could also provide the links to all of them.
Sorry, I think my internet dropped out there a minute, but thank you very much, and thanks for that link in the chat. And so, Rowley, I think people need a few, maybe a bit longer to digest all the information in your presentation. So that would be, if you're happy for us to send it round after, that would be
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
perfect. And then, so I think what we'll do now is the opportunity for everyone to go into breakout rooms. We're going to have 4 rooms, and it's an opportunity for everyone to talk to each other, you know, discuss what work are you doing in this area? Have you had any successes? Have you come up against any challenges? All being well with the breakout rooms, we should have an Ashton facilitator in each one. And also Rowley, Kate and Swati have agreed to be in them as well. So it'll be a really great opportunity to ask them questions. So I am going to open the breakout rooms now. There'll be 25 minutes. So please make the most of the time. As ever, please be considerate of your fellow attendees, make sure everyone has a chance to speak, and we follow Chatham House rules, which means you're free to use any of the information from the discussion, but you are not allowed to reveal who made any particular comment without explicit permission. So let me open the rooms now. So you should get a warning when you're coming back to the main room.